Hi, this is Alex Romanovich, and welcome to Global Edge Talk. Today, we have Brenna Lofeck of Mayo Clinic. Hello, Brenna.
Hi, thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
Wonderful to have you. We're doing this podcast to support a conference, very important conference on telemedicine, telehealth, and healthcare, digital health, and AI health in general that's taking place in New York City on October 30th and 31st. And you will be a speaker on a number of topics at that conference.
That's right. I'm looking forward to that conference covering various topics from ethics to pragmatic implementation of safe and effective AI.
Absolutely. I would like to introduce you. We'll give you a proper introduction. You're Director of AI, Artificial Intelligence, with emphasis on regulatory and quality at Mayo Clinic. And that's part of the Mayo Clinic broad Center for Digital Health, where you lead the governance, compliance, and quality initiatives for AI-driven healthcare solutions. Very important topics, very strategic topics right now. You've been doing this for quite some time, and over the course of 5 years, you also had a number of leadership positions where you oversaw, for example, the SAMD review board to ensure that emerging technologies and innovations like AI are ethically deployed. Tell us a little bit more about your position and why this is so important, not only for Mayo Clinic, but across the board.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. So, my job really is to help innovators that are exiting the discovery stage. This is where they have a model and they have some demonstration of valid clinical association, understand how they can translate their tool into clinical practice in a way that is safe, effective, and ethical. And we don't do so in a way, too, that aligns with laws, regulations, and standards. At Mayo Clinic, I've interacted with around 400 different digital health teams, most of which contain some sort of predictive or generative AI enabled capability. And they're all really excited to implement their tools into clinical practice to solve local problems. These are physician innovators, so they really understand what needs to be done to move the needle on patient care. And now more than ever, we have software technology that can get in the hands of these innovators, either by having them develop themselves, co-develop with an external entity, or bring in from a vended solution. It's just a really exciting time to be in this space, especially to be at Mayo, where we're such a large organization with such brilliance, with folks that are deeply enthusiastic about developing this innovative technology.
One of the talks you're going to be doing at Con2 VX is from lab to bedside, which is extremely important in terms of how do you take a lot of these innovations and practically move them into the field, have the clinicians, have the institutions use them, and obviously measure the results of that safely, ethically, and securely. Give us a little bit of a preview on that and why this is such an important topic for any large, obviously Mayo Clinic, but any large healthcare organization.
Yeah. So a lot of our teams of the 400 digital health technologies that I've interacted with, a lot of them are in this discovery stage, which is the exciting part, right? You've identified a problem. You've determined that AI can help solve it in some way, and you built the tool. You've demonstrated that it has some valid clinical association, but that's just the model. We often say that that's the engine, but you have to build the car around the engine for it actually to be pragmatically implemented into clinical practice. And so this is where my team that is full of translation experts as well as systems engineers come into play to work with the teams to understand what that model is and what we actually have to do to integrate it into the clinical practice. A lot of our tools are actually being integrated in, and so this translational work, the technical engineering that comes with actually taking that tool that's standalone in a research capacity to actually implementing it into practice is critical. And a lot of our experts, our physicians, don't necessarily have that knowledge of what to do. So we need to make sure healthcare institutions have folks that are in the space of regulatory, technical engineering, and systems engineering to be able to support that infrastructure around the model to be able to translate it into clinical practice. The other aspect of this that is really near and dear to my heart is ensuring that we've really identified what the potential risks, especially patient harms, could be that are affiliated with these tools. A lot of teams that are coming out of discovery have done some sort of retrospective testing, but they don't really know how the product will perform in a real world clinical scenario or simulated scenario. And so, working with our teams to do what we refer to as patient safety analyses are of significant importance to hypothetically project what those hazardous situations or scenarios are that could happen when you implement AI technology into the clinical workflow and either augment or replace that standard of care and identify what patient harms or risks could come from that. It's critical then to assess that risk using some sort of calculation. At Mayo Clinic, we use a calculation of severity times probability to determine whether that risk would be acceptable or unacceptable. And for those that are unacceptable, we identify controls or mitigations that need to be implemented to really ensure that the benefit is outweighing the risk of these digital health technologies. So when we talk about bridging AI from research to the bedside, what is most important to us at Mayo Clinic and what will likely resonate with a lot of healthcare institutions is really ensuring that we are still upholding that standard of care while maximizing the benefit and reducing the risk to patients to as low as possible. And we can do that through systematic approaches and well-developed AI governance that ensure that these tools are implemented with the right guardrails in place.
It's fascinating and very involved, very complex. How do you, aside from the fact that regulatory and compliance is very complex and is getting even more complex, how do you balance regulatory and quality? How do
Mhm,
you balance regulatory and innovations?
mhm.
This must be quite a challenge. Tell us more.
Yeah. Mayo Clinic and other healthcare institutions have likely taken a very decentralized approach to the development and implementation of AI enabled technologies up to this point. We see this happen anytime there's a revolution or an evolution in technology, where you want to have that decentralized approach to really empower your different innovators and leaders to take the tools that they have, come up with ideas, and build things. So, right now, Mayo Clinic really is at a critical juncture where we're moving from a decentralized model that optimized innovation, that really allowed for physicians and other researchers to develop technologies relatively freely under research, to a more centralized model that is mature, that is established for developing a clear pipeline of standardized practices for the tools that are coming from this decentralized space to a centralized, clearly established set of requirements to implement technologies into clinical practice. So I advise healthcare institutions to think about innovation really in these two buckets where we enable it through a decentralized approach, a playground, if you will, where those people who are close to the problems or are passionate about improving different aspects of healthcare can play around, can develop cool things, but within the safe space of research, with the protection of human subjects under the IRB. But then, when we get to the point of actually vetting those technologies and determining which ones we're going to invest in, either the ones that we're building or co developing ourselves, or ones that we're bringing in from an external entity, from a vended solution, we need to have a clear process of how we are grading these tools or triaging them for deployment into clinical practice. And that really is where things like regulations, standards, laws, even best practices as defined by academia for these different technologies need to be embedded into healthcare institutional policies and practices so that we have experts in house that can help sift through these tools and really find the best ones to implement into clinical practice.
Brenna, let's talk about trust. Clinicians, physicians, and even patients may not necessarily trust immediately some of the new innovations. I mean, look how long it would take some of the technologies that we're used to, some of the instruments. Now, that took quite a time for the adaption. How do you measure the level of adaption? How do you measure the level of trust? Or what are the strategies to make it more effective, if you will, the level of adoption and trust of some of these new technologies,
Mhm.
in terms of data transparency to you and also data privacy for them in terms of them sharing information and even, being concerned about how this information is going to be used for them or against them?
I love this question. And I'm going to be honest. One thing that I look forward to discussing at this conference with other individuals and healthcare institutions in the medtech space is what is their approach to building trust with providers, patients, and the public? We haven't solved it yet. This is something that is an ongoing effort at Mayo Clinic, but also across the industry as a whole. One thing that we can do is look to the recommendations that FDA has been providing, at least for AI-enabled medical devices. So a few years ago, they did release a guidance document around the end user facing content that they recommend be part of every AI enabled digital health technology that meets the definition of a medical device. And one of the critical components there really is around transparency and traceability of how is that technology producing the output, including what are the inputs to it, as well as what is the product's performance and how does it perform against the range of demographics for which the tool should be used. So I think that FDA is really setting the precedent for us for those higher risk technologies, the ones that are meeting the definition of a medical device. And I advise our teams at Mayo Clinic, and I advise others who are interested in this topic to really look at that guidance document, because I think FDA has done a wonderful job of outlining kind of line by line what you can do to establish that trust with your end user, who usually is a provider or some sort of healthcare professional, but also in building that trust with public availability with your patients too. So we could take that and apply that to non-medical devices as well, which I would say just the sheer volume of technologies in this space is just far more common that we're going to be dealing with non-medical devices in the predictive and generative AI space. And for this, we can also look to groups like CHAI, the Coalition for Health AI, who have done a lot of work giving recommendations and building templates for things that they refer to as nutrition labels. This is a template that establishes the key data points that they have done research on that really helps the end user and the public understand what is this tool doing, how well is it doing it across the different demographics or critical groups that will benefit from the technology, and other key references that can help build that trust. One thing that I will say I am particularly interested in engaging in dialogue with others about is what sort of consent process do we have with providers and with patients when it comes to notifying them that AI has been used as part of their care spectrum. And I think it really comes down to understanding what that patient or public preference is based on the intended use of the technology itself. You might not want to be notified that AI was used to help find the best time to schedule you for your MRI, but you might want to know that AI was actually used on your MRI image itself to help with detection and diagnosis. And so here is a space where we need to collectively work with academia, industry, and healthcare institutions to really understand what those preferences are, what the different best practices could be, and what the impact is if we do increase disclosure and consent around AI use to advance that trust.
That's fascinating. I guess, what, in your view, is the next frontier? You're doing some interesting doctoral and postdoctoral work in health policy and AI governance. Can you give us a crystal ball on, or if you had the crystal ball, can you give us a little bit of a insight into the future as to what AI governance is going to look like over the next 5 to 10 years? And what are some of the policies that will be put in place or should be put in place to ensure fairness, accountability, transparency? I guess fairness, again, I would say.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm taking a look at my crystal ball here. And if we maintain the current trajectory that we're on, I think that we are seeing a regulatory posture in the United States that is one of decentralized oversight that really prioritize innovation over enforcement of laws or regulations. And so, what this then comes down to, or may translate to pragmatically, is local AI governance as opposed to the traditional paradigm of federal level oversight of technologies that are used within healthcare institutions. And I'll explain that actually for our audience. The traditional paradigm is that FDA is the key regulator for medical device technologies because they have oversight of things that trigger interstate commerce. So when we build a medical device and we want to market it, we have to go through FDA. And the role that FDA plays is assuring that that technology is safe and effective and protects the citizens of the United States and any other patients that are coming and interacting with our healthcare system. Although we haven't seen any definitive changes from the FDA or from Congress with their laws, we have seen indicators from our federal government that they really are looking for AI specifically to decentralize that and implement more of that local oversight and governance. And so we have seen through executive orders indications that there will be consequences if states or other governments don't prioritize that AI innovation. And I think that that includes healthcare institutions or healthcare use of AI. So, coming back to my point here, now that we have some kind of fundamental understanding of what the current paradigm or the historical paradigm has been of how we see regulations applied or governance applied to medical devices, I do think when it relates to software based technologies that are using AI, that are affiliated with healthcare, we are going to see AI governance really become something that is critical for healthcare institutions themselves to own. And Mayo Clinic has sort of anticipated this with our creation of our software as a medical device review board. And this is a physician-led group of experts who review all of the AI-enabled digital health technologies that are developed at Mayo Clinic that are looking to be implemented into practice. And so I emphasize the creation of this board because I think other healthcare institutions, through their own mechanisms, through their own policies and practices, are going to have to own a lot of that AI governance work that was traditionally really in the hands of FDA. And this is both for non-medical devices as well as for medical devices, because we are just seeing a boom in technology in the space that just in general would not be regulated by FDA because they aren't medical devices. So healthcare institutions will need to reflect on what their values are, what their risk tolerances are, and what the evidence they want to see on file for these AI-enabled digital health solutions before they get implemented into clinical practice. So that's what I see in my crystal ball, that we are going to continue moving in this direction where FDA will still have oversight of medical device technologies in general, but for AI-enabled digital health technologies, healthcare institutions are going to take on an increasingly important role in local AI governance, where they are going to have to serve in a similar capacity to FDA insofar that they will be reviewing key information about these digital health technologies and making the decision if they would like to implement them into clinical practice. And even, yes, I can hear you. Yeah. You were kind of cutting in and out for me earlier. Yeah. Both video and audio, I should say. You're cutting in and out again. I don't hear you if you're talking. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Here's what I'd like to suggest because I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yes.
This is such an amazing discussion, and I hate to interrupt it right now, but I do not see a recording in the main console, unfortunately.
Okay.
Rather than doing that, rather than taking a chance on this really great discussion, see, you're also freezing. You're in and out, so I'm wondering if it's my side, if it's your side, which side, I'm not even sure. I just did a recording right before you, and it
Mhm.
was absolutely fine. So I'm not sure. So maybe we should move to Zoom. But I know we only have half hour left. Is it possible for us to repeat a part of this discussion or the entire discussion on Monday?
Yeah, let's take a look at our calendars.
Yes, because, and again, I really apologize. This is technical difficulties on my end.
So is life. It happened. And
I know.
it could be on my side, and for the re-recording, I can
Yeah.
hardwire in to make sure that it's not an issue on my side.
Yes.
So,
Either Monday or Tuesday or um, yeah, Monday or Tuesday.
okay.
If Tuesday is better for you, we can do Tuesday.
So on Monday, I would only be able to do it early in the morning, like at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Central, I guess, if you're on the East Coast, or sorry, 9 a.m. Eastern.
You're Central, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible. We
Okay.
can do
So that,
that.
yeah, I could do 8
Hang
a.m.
on.
Central. Yep. Do you
Let's
want to
see.
just
8
do
a.m.
that?
Central. Perfect. 8 a.m. Central would be what? Would be 9, I guess, right? Okay. Perfect. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. That would be great. 9. Could we do, well, I don't want to do it earlier than that. Actually, I do have a bit of a, I mean, if we could do a half hour,
Mm-hmm.
that would be fine.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm going to send you an invite then for 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And again, apologies if that's my end. I have no idea what happened. I mean, I have a whole studio here and it's just
Mm,
something. And maybe there will be if we save that first portion of it, I'm going to look into it. Then it's perfect. Then we'll be able to splice all of this using AI, by the way.
sure.
But it's such a great discussion. I really appreciate it. Let's
Yeah.
continue on Monday, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Alex.
Brenna.
Oh,
Have a
Alex,
great weekend.
one other thing, small, if we re-record, it does not bother me, but the pronunciation of my last name is Lofeck. It's not phonetic.
Lofeck.
So
Absolutely.
if we record, but you nailed my first name, which is the only one that really matters to me.
Lofeck. Brenna
Yes.
Lofeck. You got
All
it.
right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. All right.
I
Bye.
appreciate it. Okay. Bye bye.